all that. Of course, I was devastated, man. I was devastated. I'm like, how can this happen? I've been praying and all this stuff and whatnot. Like I was praying to God, like God, like why, why and how. Hey, Kingdom fam, how are you guys? I know it's been a long, hot minute. You guys haven't seen me post, or I haven't made a video in like, I can't even say how long, maybe over a year or maybe a few months. See, I don't even know how long it's been. Um, I just want to say something. I was in prayer before I got in here, and I was praying that if I should share my testimony, and I heard that God said now. So I'm sharing my testimony of what happened 3 years ago. And I'm sure there's someone else that was probably or will be in the same position as me. Um, so what basically happened is, I'm sure y'all have seen my old past videos where I've mentioned that, that I was pregnant and all that. And I didn't think I was ever going to get pregnant, because, whenever I would try, um, whenever I would try, it could never happen. And then I remember, trying to figure out what month, I think September of 2022, I was just depressed and everything because I see, like, although that I am married, and it's like I couldn't have kids. And when people are asking, it's like it's so much pressure, and it's like you don't know what else to do. Everyone's telling you go to the doctor. When you go to the doctor, they tell you that there's nothing wrong, and you're like, well, something has to be wrong, because why can't I produce a child? Why can't I not have a child? You're talking to someone who has 9 miscarriages. And before I prayed to God around September 2022, I was pregnant. I was probably like a few weeks pregnant, but then I ended up losing, the baby as well. And, I was completely devastated. And I told my husband this, like, I think probably like a few days, a few weeks after. And I remember I was at work, and then I was praying to God. And God, if someone could just bless me, perhaps maybe I could have a child. And then I remember on that same day, I headed to Walmart. And as I headed to Walmart, this lady just came to me. I don't know why she came to me, but she came to me, and she was asking me, if I could help her out, whatever. And she said that she needed, like a fare to take the bus, and I told her that I could take her instead of her, taking the fare. And she was like, no, because she said I don't know where it is exactly. And then she was telling me, like, like between the intersections, and I'm looking at her like, okay, I don't know. Hey, Kingdom fam, how are you guys? I know it's been a long, hot minute. You guys haven't seen me post, or I haven't made a video in like, I can't even say how long, maybe over a year or maybe a few months. See, I don't even know how long it's been. I just want to say something. I was in prayer before I got in here, and I was praying that if I should share my testimony, and I heard that God said now. So I'm sharing my testimony of what happened 3 years ago. And I'm sure there's someone else that was probably or will be in the same position as me. Um, so what basically happened is, I'm sure y'all have seen my old past videos where I've mentioned that, that I was pregnant and all that. And I didn't think I was ever going to get pregnant, because, whenever I would try, um, whenever I would try, it could never happen. And then I remember, trying to figure out what month, I think September of 2022, I was just depressed and everything because I see, like, although that I am married, and it's like I couldn't have kids. And when people are asking, it's like it's so much pressure, and it's like you don't know what else to do. Everyone's telling you go to the doctor. When you go to the doctor, they tell you that there's nothing wrong, and you're like, well, something has to be wrong, because why can't I produce a child? Why can't I not have a child? You're talking to someone who has 9 miscarriages. And before I prayed to God around September 2022, I was pregnant. I was probably like a few weeks pregnant, but then I ended up losing the baby as well. And, I was completely devastated. And I told my husband this, like, I think probably like a few days, a few weeks after. And I remember I was at work and then I was praying to God. And God, if someone could just bless me, perhaps maybe I could have a child. And then I remember on that same day, I headed to Walmart. And as I headed to Walmart, this lady just came to me. I don't know why she came to me, but she came to me. And she was asking me, if I could help her out, whatever. And she said that she needed, like, a fare to take the bus. And I told her that I could take her instead of her, taking the fare. And she was like, no, because she said, I don't know where it is exactly. And then she was telling me, like, like between the intersections. And I'm looking at her like, okay, I don't know. I was basically telling her, like, I don't know that area. So, she was like, no, it's okay. She's like, like, I'm willing to take the bus. I said, are you sure you want to take the bus? She was like, yeah. So I didn't even have like that much. I had probably had like maybe $10 to $12 into my account. And I said, and I think that the bus was like $2 or $2.50 or something like that. And then I told her, and I said, okay. I said, well, come. I said, come follow me. I went to the cashier. I assumed I could, how like when you go to the cashier and you could just take out cash through your debit card, whatever. They told me no, so they sent me to the ATM. I went to the ATM from there and got what I wanted to give to the lady. When I handed her $5, she was like, no, that's too much. I said, no. I said, what if you get lost and you have to take the bus again? So just take the $5. I don't mind. Oh, I could pay you back. I said, no. I said, no need to pay me back. No need to pay me back. And then before we departed, she was like, you know what? She said, God bless you. She said, I don't know why you did it for me. I don't know how we interact. She said, God bless you. She's like, oh, like, where are you from? I said, I'm from New York. She's like, no, like, where your family's from? And I told her my family's from Haiti. She was like, oh, I thought, she thought I was she thought I was Jamaican or something. Because I get that a lot from people. They always think I'm Jamaican. I'm like, no. I said, I understand patois a lot, but I'm not Jamaican. Although, shout out to my Jamaicans. I love y'all. But I was like, no. I said, my family's from Haiti or whatnot. And she was like, oh my gosh, may God bless you, this and that, da, da, da. And when she said that, I wasn't even thinking about like what she said it. Like I didn't really take it in. I just said, okay, yeah, thank you, and whatever. And then fast forward to should I say 3 months later? 4 months later. Okay, fast forward to 4 months later. I was at the gym. I was doing my best to lose weight. I was losing weight at first, and I was doing my best. Like I was at the gym losing weight, trying to do what I can to lose the weight that I wanted to lose. And I started feeling out of breath. I forgot which equipment I was on. I started feeling out of breath. My husband was like, are you okay? I said, I don't know. I said, I feel like I'm out of breath. And my heart was pounding too. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is weird. I'm like, what's going on? And then we went home. Actually, I went home. He had to go back to his job because he was doing like a 24-hour thing or whatever. And the next morning, like when I woke up, I felt like the side of my head was like pounding. I'm like, wait, why is the side of my head pounding? And I don't know if I took Tylenol or not. I don't remember. I don't think I took anything for it. And as I was at work, I still was feeling the same thing. And then around like the mid-afternoon, I called my husband. I said, hey, I think after work I'm gonna go to like the urgent care or something because I'm not feeling good. So after when I informed my spouse that, like, hey, like I'm not feeling good, I'm going to the urgent care. And then, as I got to the urgent care, whatever, I was sitting down. I'm thinking like, I don't know what they're gonna tell me. I don't know what's going on with me or whatever. I do know like the health issues that I already have, but at the same time, it's like maybe something worse. Like, I don't know. And yeah, I promise you, like in the spirit, I kept hearing surprise. I said surprise. I'm like, surprise for what? Like, what do you mean surprise? Like, I don't get it. And then I heard in the spirit, like the Holy Spirit telling me, like, you'll see. Like, I'll see. I'm like, see what? I'm here in pain. I'm having a side headache. What do you mean? So when they called me in, they did, all my vitals and stuff, and they noticed that my vitals was, that my BP, blood pressure was elevated. They were like, whoa, like, blood pressure is elevated. Have you, da, da, da? And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, but it's a common thing. So it's like, I mean, for me, and I'm like, I say it's common. I've had it before. So what's up? I mean, it has to be something. And then they had me do all this other stuff to check what it is or whatnot. So after the MA had came in, she was like, have you been aware of any other symptoms, whatever? I said, not really. I just know, like, I've been feeling tired lately. My heart is pounding like crazy and whatnot. And I had assumed that it's probably like they might tell me I might have anxiety or something. And then she was like, well, she's like, I don't know if you're aware or not. She said, but you're pregnant. I was smiling. When she told me, I was like, wait. I said, what? She's like, you're pregnant. I looked at her like, what do you mean I'm pregnant? I looked at her like, yo, are you sure? She was like, yeah. She's like, I have the what you call that thing that you got to pee on? Not the. It wasn't a pregnancy test. It was the. I think it's a HCG type of strip thing, whatever, that they use. And then she showed it to me. It's like 2 lines. She's like, yeah, it's like you're pregnant. I said, I looked at her. I said, yo. I said, tell me you're lying. I said, is this a prank? Is this what? I'm like, y'all pranking people? She was like, no. What? She's like, no. Why would I prank you? No. She's like, you're pregnant. I started crying. I was like, she was like, are you okay? I was like, oh my gosh. I said, it's been 10 years I've been trying to get pregnant. She looked at me like, whoa, like 10 years. Like, yeah. But yeah, it took me like 10 years, like to get pregnant. So when she told me that, I was like, what? And I was crying, excited, whatever. And then when the doctor came in, she's like, has she told you? I had to make it seem like, she didn't tell me anything. And then he was like, well, congratulations, you're pregnant. And I was like, are you sure I'm pregnant? He was like, you want to take the test again? I was like, no. I definitely said no. I'm like, I'm not planning on taking the test again or whatever. And then they said that, like, because of my BP, I need to go to the hospital that they had that was nearby, and just to check and see that, I'm okay, because they didn't have the ultrasound to check to see how far along I was. Because I told them, like, I really didn't feel any symptoms. That they said, like, normally, like when you go through your pregnancy, like, you feel symptoms. Like, I didn't really feel anything, to be honest with you. So when I got out, how most females, like, when they find out that depending on the type of relationship they have, they like to do the surprise and whatever. I didn't do that. I didn't want to either, because I imagine it's been 10 years. Why would I want to do all that? No. The moment I left the doors of the urgent care, I ended up calling my husband, and he was like, what did they say? Is everything okay? And then I started crying. He was like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And I was like, I said, I'm pregnant. He was like, what? I said, I'm pregnant. He was like, wait, say that again? I said, I'm pregnant. Bro, I heard complete silence. I said, hello? Hello? And he was like, I'm here. He said, say that again? He's like, I said, I'm pregnant. So then I told them that what they told me, but I didn't go to the hospital that they recommended. I probably should have, but I didn't. I ended up going to the one that was a bit closer to me, because I know, like, once I get there, it's like they take me instantly. So that's why I went there. So when I went there, whatever, of course I had to wait, because there was other people in front of me and whatnot. I had to wait, and I gave them the report from the urgent care of what was stated and whatnot. And then my husband actually met me there, and he hugged me so much, because, imagine it's been 10 years that, we've been trying, and, nothing was happening. So, he was there hugging me and whatever, very super excited. And I think he talked to one of his buddies that was there too as well. Yeah, there was one of his buddies that was there that he hadn't seen for so long and whatnot. And he made sure I was really taking, like, great care. So when that ended up happening, of course they got to do all your blood drawing and all that stuff. And then when they took me to a room, they took me to the ultrasound. And then when I look at the ultrasound, I saw my little one. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was like, look at my little blessing right here. And, I found out that I was 13 weeks. And I look at them like, what? I said 13 weeks. I said 13 weeks. And I'm calculating in my head. Well, I said, wait, 13 weeks is like a little over 3 months. I'm like, you mean I kind of passed my first trimester? And I didn't even know. They're like, yeah, you about like 13 weeks and a few days. I said, eh? I said, nah. I said, this can't be right. I was in shock when they told me I was that far along. I said, how? I'm like, I don't even recall. I said, and I'm trying to go back. Like, wait, like how? Because how can I be 3 months? I'm like, like I'm playing all these things in my head. Like, how is that even possible? And I'm like, and then it dawned on me on what happened. I'm not gonna talk about that. I was like, oh, I said, okay, all right. I said that makes sense. I said okay, but I would never expect for me to be that far along. But anyways, this is where I'm trying to get at. So fast forward, come to, I guess you could say, like a first part of my second trimester or whatever. Of course, I had to go to the doctors constantly or whatever because of what I had going on, because of my hypertension and whatnot, and they're also stating that, like I had to go to the doctor every week since this was my first kid, and this was my 10th pregnancy as well. So, the fact that I had to keep going every week, and I had to miss work so much too because of that. I really wasn't resting. I'm not gonna lie. I had 2 jobs and everything because when you financially tight, you do what you have to do, right? I assume I could handle it. And I remember like one of my last appointments that I had went to, and I'll never forget it. I went for another ultrasound just to see how the baby is, because the one prior they said, like, the baby looked small, whatever, and I'm like, because I know for a fact that I wasn't able to eat the way I should have, because I was very self conscious about, because I was already big. I didn't want to be bigger. You know what I'm saying? And knowing how other people can be like, oh my gosh, like she got bigger, but I didn't appear pregnant. So a lot of people didn't know if I was pregnant. I didn't appear pregnant. I let people know I was pregnant probably like maybe around my probably when I was 15 weeks. That's when I had let people know, like no, I say people, like my coworkers. I didn't even let my family know that I was pregnant or whatever. And then when that ended up happening and whatnot, um yeah, like after when they said that my baby like appeared small, he looks like he's a week prior than, how can I say this, he looks like he's much small, like, okay, let's say he looks smaller than how he should be. Like, he shouldn't be small, he shouldn't be at least a bit bigger. So that's why they were concerned about me coming every week or whatever. But I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't eating properly, because not only that, I was living with people, and like when you're living with people, like you can't really do like a lot of things. Um, so I was in shock when they told me I was that far along. I said, how? I'm like, I don't even recall. I said, and I'm trying to go back. Like, wait, like how? Because how can I be 3 months? I'm like, like I'm playing all these things in my head. Like, how is that even possible? And I'm like, and then it dawned on me on what happened. I'm not gonna talk about that. I was like, oh, I said okay, all right. I said that makes sense. I said okay, but I would never expect for me to be that far along. But anyways, this is where I'm trying to get at. So fast forward, come to, I guess you could say, like a first part of my second trimester or whatever. Of course, I had to go to the doctors constantly or whatever because of what I had going on, because of my hypertension and whatnot, and they're also stating that, like I had to go to the doctor every week since this was my first kid, and this was my 10th pregnancy as well. So, the fact that I had to keep going every week, and I had to miss work so much too because of that. I really wasn't resting. I'm not gonna lie. I had 2 jobs and everything because when you financially tight, you do what you have to do, right? I assume I could handle it. And I remember like one of my last appointments that I had went to, and I'll never forget it. I went for another ultrasound just to see how the baby is, because the one prior, they said, like, the baby looked small, whatever. And I'm like, because I know for a fact that I wasn't able to eat the way I should have, because I was very self-conscious about, because I was already big. I didn't want to be bigger. You know what I'm saying? And knowing how other people can be like, oh my gosh, like she got bigger, but I didn't appear pregnant. So a lot of people didn't know if I was pregnant. I didn't appear pregnant. I let people know I was pregnant probably like maybe around my probably when I was 15 weeks. That's when I had let people know, like, no, I say people, like my coworkers. I didn't even let my family know that I was pregnant or whatever. And then when that ended up happening and whatnot, um, yeah, like after when they said that my baby like appeared small, he looks like he's a week prior than, how can I say this? He looks like he's much small, like, okay, let's say he looks smaller than how he should be. Like, he shouldn't be small. He should be at least a bit bigger. So that's why they were concerned about me coming every week or whatever. But I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't eating properly, because not only that, I was living with people, and like when you're living with people, like you can't really do like a lot of things. Um, so I was kind of restricted, excuse me, from doing certain things. So during my last ultrasound appointment, right? I assumed everything would be fine or whatever. And, when the doctor came in, because normally she would come in just to make sure everything's fine. When she came in, she was like, I think you need to go to the hospital. I was looking at her like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital. And just to let y'all know that day when I went for my last ultrasound, I had just got off a night shift. I went home, took a shower, and then went to my appointment. I just got off a night shift. So when I had did that, then she told me to go to the hospital. For me, I'm thinking maybe they just want me to check to make sure I'm okay or whatever, because ultrasounds don't really have that much equipment and stuff like that, and they can't really tell you, you have this, you have that. So I thought maybe that's why they wanted me to go to the hospital. Went to the hospital and whatnot, and then I ended up telling my husband, look, they told me to go to the hospital. He ended up going with me as well. Of course, at first I wanted to stop to get me some food because I was hungry. So went to go stop and get some food, and then I went to the hospital, and then they admitted me. When they admitted me, I'm like, why am I being admitted? Well, first I went to the ER department. They were like, no, you have to go to the main entrance. So when I went to the main entrance, went to whatever floor it was for labor and delivery. And then you're like, you have to change your clothes and blah blah. I'm like, for me, I'm saying, okay, it's probably just a normal routine thing that they got to do or whatever and whatnot. And then that's when they end up breaking down the news to me, saying, oh, we're admitting you because this, not blah blah, because the baby is not looking too well. I said, huh? I said, what you mean he's not looking too well? I said, well, like, what do you mean by he's not looking too well? No, my baby should be fine. Da, da, da. They're like, no, he's not looking too well. So, but they were telling me that, that I will have to be transferred to another hospital. And this hospital would be where, they could help me out more. They probably might help me have my child be more full term. They said there's a possibility that my child could be premature, but they're not definite on it. But like they said, they told me that these things kind of happen. Like everyone has their own pregnancy journey, so I can't really say how it is for everyone. But for me, I was like, like, although my face appeared calm, but deep down inside, I'm like, oh my gosh, God, like, what's going on? God, what's going on? God, what is going on? And then God's like, telling me, like, just calm down. Just listen to what they're saying. Just calm down. And, oh gosh. And then, bro, this is a lot. I didn't think I was saying this much, but I guess God wants me to share this a lot. And, it came to where they told me that I'll be transferred. And where they told me that I'll be transferred to is exactly where the urgent care doctor had told me that that's where I should go. Now, that's where I should have gone. and stuff after when I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, y'all taking me there? Like, all the way down there? They're like, yeah, like, they're one of the best, So I'm not saying, like, we can't do it, but we don't want, since this is your 10th pregnancy after 9 miscarriages, we don't want you to, like, lose your baby or whatever. I said, lose my baby? They're like, well, we don't mean to say it like that. But I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, oh my goodness. Oh my God. I said, like, I was panicking even more. But it's like God was telling me, just calm down and relax. Like, don't be too anxious or don't have too much anxiety. Like, just calm down. So I listened. I calmed down a bit. Like, they gave me an IV. No, they didn't give me an IV. What they put me on? What's that thing called again? Like, it kind of makes you, like, it's like you can't really move or whatever. I mean, you can move, but it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot what it's called. Not chlorophyll. Oh, what is it called? I'm forgetting. But they put me on that. I think that's something with potassium. I don't remember, but they put me on that. So after when I got transferred, they took care of the needy, whatever. I was in that hospital for a good 2 weeks. Of course, I was exhausted because they put me on that stuff. I felt like I was high. I'm not saying that I saw things, but I feel like I was high. And I'm like this, I'm like that. Like, when the doctors are coming in, I'm like this. Like, mind you, I had no one to really speak for me because my husband was at work and stuff. So it was just me. Like, I have to deal with everything on my own while they're giving me a report and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm like this, Like, you ever see when someone's high? It's like, for me, that's what it felt like. But it's like, I guess that's one of the what do you call it? The, like, reactions to it. I was like this. I was like, and I had to keep my eyes open. I feel like I wanted to sleep because to me it tastes like seawater. I don't know if anyone has ever done been through that. It tastes like seawater. And it's like, I said, why do I smell seawater? They say, oh, it's that thing that's connected to you. I said, okay, whatever. So I had one doctor who came in and she prayed in with me because, they were actually concerned about, how the baby was developing in my womb and whatnot. And then I remember, after being there for like almost 3 weeks, I think. Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks. Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks. After me being there for 3 weeks, and I remember, like, every time they wanted me, I was like I couldn't even move, and I'm the type of person, I can't stay in one position forever. So they had me on what's that, like, kind of like a hearing ultrasound where I could like hear his heart rate, whatever. And the moment they strapped that thing on my belly, boy, this child would move himself. Like, when I say he would move. Like, I guess because he was so small, like he would just swim away. Like, but I was informed by one of the nurses, like, whenever a child hears it, it's like an echo to their ears, and I guess he didn't like that sound, and he would just, like, swim away. So they would have to come back in the room, keep searching for where he is, like, and I said, oh my God, I said, boy, just stay still. Ooh, this child could not stay still for nothing. But I don't blame him either. And I remember, like, the last time, I remember they told me they wanted me to stay with it for 12 hours. I said 12 hours. I said, I can't do 12 hours, man. Like, stay on it for 12. Like, because I couldn't move. Like, even if I want to move to my side, I couldn't move to my side. I had to stay on my back. And I'm not much of a back layer. I'm more of a side layer. Yeah. Like, yeah, like a side, when I say side layer, like someone who likes to lay down on their side. So I'm like, why y'all making me doing all this, man? I said, this is, like, too much. Like, I can't. I told them I could do probably certain hours. And they said, oh, okay. Right? So I remember on that day, I'm not even gonna mention that day. But I remember that particular night. That one particular night, I took a shower. I took myself a shower. After I took my shower, I felt a little bit better. I think I ate my food prior to me showering. Yeah, I had ate my food prior to me showering. I had ended up dressing myself, putting lotion, all that on myself. And as I'm relaxing, thinking I'll be able to go to sleep, here comes the door being swung open. So many doctors were coming in and said, oh, we have to do emergency C-section. I said, huh? What you mean emergency C-section? I just laid down. Like, what happened? Oh, we have to do emergency C-section. We're not hearing your child's heartbeat. It's not blah, blah. I said, wait. I said, what? I said, what you mean emergency C-section? I said, hold up. I said, what do you mean? They said, oh, do you have anyone that... I said, yeah, but my husband's at work right now. So I had to call him. I ended up calling my husband, telling him what's going on. My husband was like, wait, what now? I'm like, yeah, that's what they're telling me. Like, he said, did they say what? I said, they told me that they don't hear his heartbeat. I don't know. But for me, I don't know. Anyways, I don't want. So after when they came and did all that, like they had to prep me and all that stuff, I had to call my husband. My husband said, like he'll come, but it would take him like probably like an hour or whatever. So I had to sign all these papers. They did all this stuff, and then they transferred me to the OR. And then of course I had to switch myself because I'm heavy, so they're not gonna break their backs for me, which is fine. So I ended up transferring myself, whatever, and then I don't know if people of color have. I'm sure a lot of people of color has been through this, but I didn't like how they treated me, and I'm gonna say it straight up. Like the way I got treated in that OR room, I didn't like it, and I think that's why I said I'm not planning on having no other kid because of that experience. So what ended up happening was, as I got transferred, right, and whoever the anesthesiologist was, the fact that I had the IV connected to my backhand, because it's hard to find my veins, or this in my veins were small, whatever. So I don't know why or how I don't know if it's painful when it comes to the anesthesiology, like I don't know, whatever, or the anesthesia. I don't know if it's painful, then I don't know, but that was my first experience. When I felt that thing going through, it's like they were pushing it inside my body, and it hurt it so much to the point where I had to yell and scream, because it's like, why are you pushing something that shouldn't be pushing like that? And it hurt it so bad. Mind you, it's like the IV is connected to the back of my hand, and it hurt it. And I end up yelling, and as I yelled, one person covered my mouth. And I'm like, what the hell? So excuse me for my language. So I had to, take that person and be like, bro, like, or whatever you are, move your hand. And it hurt it so bad. And then they end up doing it again, and I yelled. And as I yelled, I remember being knocked out. That's the last thing I remember. I remember as I yelled, I remember being knocked out. And after me being knocked out, of course, well, no, actually, let me go a little bit back. Before I got transferred to the OR, my body was shaking. It just not came to me. My body was shaking so badly, and I have no idea why my body was shaking. My body was shaking so badly, like I thought something could have happened to me if, while they were doing this whole thing. And my body was shaking so badly, even especially before I even transferred myself to the table. My body was shaking so badly. I was telling God, I said, God, I trust you. I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but God, I trust you. I trust you totally. Whatever happens is all in your hands. That's all I end up saying. But this is prior to me getting knocked out and whatever. So even while I was still like, yelling, laying down, and I was still shaking. And then after I got knocked out, whatever, mind you, I had no dream, no nothing. So it's like, okay, so for having me, I had to deal with all that. Of course, I was devastated, man. I was devastated. I'm like, how can this happen? I've been praying and all this stuff and whatnot. Like I was praying to God, like God, like why and how? And then God made me remember. I think it was a vision or a dream that I had. I think 2 months to me being hospitalized or whatever. And I remember praying, saying, I rebuke it in the blood of Jesus. Like that's not gonna happen. But I guess that was meant to happen or whatever. But I believe I was told to fast, and I didn't do that because I was pregnant, and I didn't have that knowledge to fully trust at that time to be like, like for me to do it, because I thought, if you're pregnant, why do I need to fast? Because I like I said, how sometimes that the Bible states, like we perish for the lack of knowledge, which I guess that's what happened. So, when God had, revealed that to me and whatnot, so, I was asking so much questions, like, God, why me? Why is this happening? Like everyone I know, especially from my family, like they were able to take their kid the next day. Why is this going on with me? Why me? It's just a whole bunch of whys. And then for some odd reason, like when the doctors call, I guess like, for me, I assume like my son would have one doctor, But I guess being in the NICU, like every week they had different doctors, so it was kind of hard to keep up. Every day was something, every week it was something. I had to the point where he was, I think, 3 weeks, no, probably like a month old. My son was intubated for a very long time. He was intubated for a good 4 months, I believe. Yeah, he was, yeah, no, 3 or 4 months. I think 4 months. Yeah, he was intubated for a good 4 months. But prior to that 4 months, let's say he was about, what, three, no, he was probably like a month old, like a month or a month and a half old. And the doctor was telling me that, he's gonna take my son off of, off the intubation and give him a CPAP. And I feel like something down in my spirit is telling me, like, no, he's not ready. And I'm telling the doctor, like, I don't think you should do that. I feel like my son's not ready. And this is the doctor's response. Well, based on my expertise or based on my experience, I've done this multiple times. I know when a child's ready. And I'm telling the doctor, as a parent of the child that I gave birth to, I'm telling the doctor, no. He's telling me based on his experience that he knows this and blah, blah. I said, I'm telling you no, so please don't do it. Well, we're just going to, I said, please don't try. Just please don't try. I'm pleading with the doctor on the phone because I wasn't able to go see because I had to run an errand with my husband at that time. So I said, please, I was pleading with the doctor. I was pleading with him. But you know how they are. Once they think they study for so long, they think they squarely know everything, right? So come to 2 hours after, he ended up calling me. He ended up telling me, well, we ended up trying, but, we had to go back to the intubation. Bro, I felt like I wanted to say, I told you so, but it's like God ended up humbling me, telling me don't say anything to him. I just said, okay. I said, so is he okay? He's like, oh yeah, he's fine. We just put him back on the, being intubated. I said, all right, thank you. All right. That ended up happening, right? So I was there. There was just a lot of things that had happened. They were forcing a lot of things. They gave him steroids and all that. And I said, and then they also give him fentanyl. And I said, what you give my child fentanyl for? Oh, he's moving a lot. I said, well, what do you expect? He's a baby. That's what babies do. They move around a lot. They can't stay in one spot because some damn machine is going off. Are you kidding me? So I told them to stop giving them fentanyl. So they end up listening to me and stop giving fentanyl. But here's where I'm trying to get at. There was a lot of things that was going on with my son. A lot of complications, right? A lot of complications. And this is what I'm gonna tell y'all, especially with new moms, especially for those who feel it in their heart, who feel it in their spirit when something's not supposed to get done. Trust in God. My son was in the hospital for 8 months, from his birth up until 8 months. I'm not saying he's the first child that's been hospitalized that long, but that's how long my son was hospitalized for. There was a lot of complications going on with my son. They want to do a lot of things with my son. Neurology, saying this and that, saying something wrong with one of his organs. I mean, he still has complications, but I don't want to name them because God's telling me not to say all that. This is where we need to trust in God. When a doctor tell you something, oh, your child gonna be like this, blah, 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 blah. When a doctor's saying that, they're speaking over your child. They're speaking, I wouldn't say really against, but they're speaking over your child. You know how someone say something bad against your child? It's like that's what they're kind of doing. When they speak that, you either could say you rebuke that in the name of Jesus in front of them, or after when they turn it back, you're going to pray and pray to God. That's what I had to do. My son, now mind you, my son was in the hospital for 8 months. I kept getting this, I kept getting that. Or your husband, my child gonna be like this, my child gonna be like that. Or he may not be able to do this and all that. It took prayers. It took to the point where I had to listen to God, where God had to tell me what to do and what not to do, or have the doctors what not to do with that child. The doctors were fighting me to do certain things. I say, no, we're not gonna do it that way. After when my child came home, my child was hospitalized. Once after my child ended up coming home, when he was cleared to come home, my child has been hospitalized 3 times in the year 2024. 3 times, right? There were certain things that they wanted to do. Once again, I did not allow them to do it because when my son was staying in the hospital, while during those 8 months, he had either the NG or the NG2. Now, that's a tool that goes past the diaphragm for feeding, right? So they wanted him to go through that again, and I said no, because these kids, these preemies, well, they are not like normal kids that's born in 9 months. They are not. I'm telling you, like they strong. Bro, they know how to do things. Like I'm like how can you do that in your preemie? Like they literally know how to remove that. Not they don't have to remove it with their hands. They do it something with their throat, and they know how to remove it. I don't know like I said, I don't know how they do it, but they do it. I told him, nope, we're not going through that, because each and every time y'all gonna keep on stucking down his throat. And I remember my mom once had it too. Prior to her passing, she had it, and she told me what it felt like. So that kind of recalled back to my memory as well. So I said, nope. I said, God told me, tell him to find an alternative. And they looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, find an alternative. When God told me that, to tell them that, the doctors looked at me like I was crazy. I said, we need to find an alternative. And guess what? It took them 2 days to find an alternative. They gave my son the IV, which is called a TPN. It's kind of like a supplement, like nutrition or whatever, because that's how bad his condition was. So I said, okay. I said, we're fine with that. And then God told me to ask them, what's the second alternative if that don't work? Oh boy, when I tell you God had me working them hard, God had me working these doctors hard, because these doctors, they think, like I said, they think they can find a simple solution. No. You need to tell me, what's your plan A, what's your plan B, what's your plan C? Because I don't just deal with plan A. No. We need backup. I need to know, because what if I have to step out in case if my husband was to have an emergency? I need to know what you plan on doing. And one thing I'm going to tell y'all parents too, I know it will be hard, but God will be able to do what he can for you. Okay? I wasn't expecting this to make this long, but I think I'm just gonna like not give too much details about what I went through. But I went through a lot. I went through a lot of depression and all that stuff. I did have therapy that was provided by the hospital. Thank God for that. I didn't even think I didn't know I had that much issues as well. But but what I'm gonna say is, when you have your child and you don't know what to do, go to God. I'm telling you, go to God. God will give you the most simple solution that a doctor who studied for 15, 20 years cannot find. If I tell y'all the things that God had told me to tell these doctors, girl, you'll be like, girl, how you know? Do you know what I have to tell these doctors? When they ask me things, I said my daddy's a doctor. What I'm trying to tell y'all is trust in God. God will find the most perfect solution for you, man. Trust me. You see how, like, when the doctors be stressing you out, what your child is going through, stressing you out because you're praying and wishing that your child wouldn't go through it. That's when you trust in God the most. Trust in God. I'm not saying just trust God for that. Trust in God for every single thing that you got going on in your life. I don't care if you're just sitting down here. Trust in God. Okay? I'm telling you, trust in God, bro. When you go to the hospital, you feel something, and the doctor is telling you that they don't see anything wrong with you. That's the time to say, okay, thank you, doc. You better go to God. Go to God. Go to your prayer closet. Go in your car. Talk to God. Be like, okay, God, what's going on? If you are the type to hear from God, okay, because remember, there's different ways that God can communicate with us, especially in this day and age. Okay, whatever God tells you to do it. Don't be disobedient. It may not sound normal to you, but just be obedient, because I'm telling you, being obedient is the best result you'll ever get in your life. I'm telling you. Okay, I'm not the only witness to it. There's a lot of people that's witness to things like that. When the doctors say that it's impossible, God said, I'll make it possible. How about that? My child is 3 now, running around, doing things that normal kids would be doing. And this is what and what doctors claim that he couldn't do, he's doing it. It didn't just take patience. It took prayers. It took fasting. It took to the point where I had to let God take control of every single situation, of every decision, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to rely on, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? So I had to rely on God for everything. That's why I always say, always keep God in everything that you do. All right? Have a good day, you guys.